So basically, everyone is talking about it in the American media. The ceasefire terms that Putin has put forward have even shocked Trump. Meanwhile, Europe is still not awake to the fact that China and the US are negotiating a tariff agreement, and Germany's Chancellor Merz is still newly in office. He's planning to take a tougher stance against China. The EU has missed the opportunity to be the first to reconcile with China, and after going back and forth with China over electric vehicle tariffs, they still haven't been able to resolve the issue. Just watching as the tariff agreement remains out of reach. Trump, on the other hand, is more pragmatic than the EU. If he can't win, he just goes to find the next easy target, ADSRT. Meanwhile, the EU keeps debating endlessly. Take German Chancellor Merz, for example, in his first government statement since taking office. You can't see a trace of Merkel's influence. Both of them come from the same political party, and have spent half their lives in politics. On the afternoon of May 14th, the new Chancellor Merz delivered his first major speech in the Bundestag after taking office. When it came to China, Merz described China as an important partner for Germany and the EU in addressing global challenges and in the economic sphere. But at the same time, he promoted the so-called strategy of de-risking with regard to China, claiming that it is necessary to reduce one-sided dependence on China. In his 45-minute speech, he stated that Germany's relationship with China is currently being shaped by systemic competition and power politics, and it would be best not to hold any illusions about this. These remarks send a clear signal of a tougher stance on China, especially regarding geopolitical issues. At present, there is still deep concern about further strengthening relations, and he declared that China must be firmly pushed to contribute to ending the Russia-Ukraine conflict. He said he would incorporate China policy into the regional strategy for a stable, free, and secure Indo-Pacific region. When it comes to major strategic significance and global challenges, for Germany and the EU, China has long been an important partner for both. He said they would resolutely promote industrial and trade policy areas that respect established rules, considering this as part of managing strategic risks. They will continue to reduce unilateral dependence on China, adding that the EU itself has set the goal of reducing excessive reliance on key goods and products from China, noting that the international order is undergoing profound changes. There is systemic competition and power at play. Politically, we have realized the need to diversify supply chains and reduce unilateral dependence. Previously, under Scholz's leadership of the German Traffic Light Coalition, there were internal disagreements within the government. However, in recent years, the EU's policy towards China has seen its influence wane, with the European Commission now led by another German conservative, Ursula von der Leyen. Second, she guides the EU. But with Trump possibly returning to the White House, the EU's stance towards China was originally expected to soften. This year, von der Leyen has repeatedly stated that when it comes to deepening trade relations between Europe and China, many people expect that the current coalition government leadership will enable Germany and the EU to present a more coordinated voice at the negotiating table. According to Balkin Hua, a Sino-German relations analyst at the research institute Rhodium Group, for Germany's new government, on one hand, the priorities are to boost competitiveness and reduce bureaucracy, while on the other hand, the goal is to promote greater security and pursue the stated objective of de-risking the China strategy. In my view, if Scholz wants to send a tougher signal to China, he should first take a close look at Germany's current situation. After receiving high praise from Hollande, especially Merkel, who after taking office in 2005, adopted a pragmatic approach. On one hand, she secured low-cost energy from Russia, and on the other, fully tapped into the Chinese market, which led to over a decade of economic prosperity for Germany. After Merkel stepped down and with the traffic light coalition government in power for several years, Germany has taken an anti-Russia and anti-China stance, and has also gone to extremes in environmental policies, causing the German economy to decline sharply. In 2024, GDP only grew by 0.2%, marking the second consecutive year of negative growth. The previous year saw a negative growth of 0.3%. According to analysis, the main reasons for the disappointing economic growth are high energy costs, rising interest rates, and intensified market competition. Economic prospects are uncertain, but energy costs show Germany has significant issues with China. Liu Yuanling of the Institute of American Studies at the Chinese Academy of Social Sciences said in Central Culture magazine, Germany faces major difficulties in its energy transition. She said that, although Germany leads the world in installed wind and solar power capacity, its aggressive abandonment of nuclear energy and forceful promotion of new energy policies have already resulted in three major negative consequences. Electricity prices for residents are the highest in the world, carbon emissions from power generation are 7 times higher than those of France, and electricity supply is highly dependent on neighboring countries' nuclear and coal power to fill the gap. Liu Yuanling went on to point out that every national energy system comes with its own costs. She said that letting ideology take the lead, Germany's nuclear energy development, which already has a 60-year history and was once among the top 3 sources of electricity, was completely abandoned due to the politicized anti-nuclear movement. With the widespread adoption of wind and solar power, the current residential electricity prices in Germany have become the highest in the world. Especially in the past 3 years, after giving up Russian natural gas, the average electricity bill for German households has increased by a quarter, which is 40 to 50% higher than the EU average. China and Germany are both led by ideology in their energy policies, but their approaches are not the same. China has always insisted on being pragmatic and grounded in reality. The electricity price in China is only 1/5 of that in Germany. Germany's electricity price is 0.39 per kilowatt hour, while China's is only 0.08. The persistently high electricity prices brought about by the energy transition not only cause public discontent, but also become disconnected from industrial and economic development. This increases economic pressure in Germany, and household living costs rise as a result. Consumer confidence has been hit, and this kind of vicious cycle, which affects the overall market's purchasing power, will continue to trouble the economic recovery of the entire Eurozone if it cannot be effectively curbed. Many industries that rely heavily on electricity, such as metallurgy, manufacturing, and retail, will all face the predicament of high production costs. To sum up, first, since Merkel stepped down after her own term, Germany's traffic light coalition government has further prioritized ideology, abandoning affordable Russian energy and reducing interactions with China. As a result, the economy has worsened, and while the outside world originally had high hopes for Scholz's administration, they expected a pragmatic and friendly approach, but now that he's in office, it's not necessarily the case that improving economic ties with China is seen as the obvious solution to Germany's economic downturn. European officials, following the lead of the United States, are promoting the so-called de-risking from China. China has repeatedly emphasized stating that for Europe, China represents an opportunity, not a risk. Treating China as a source of risk is completely misguided, and if this continues, there will be no way out for the economy. Third, in Western countries, politics takes precedence, and politicians only want to please voters, lacking the ability to lead their countries down the right path. The United States is clearly acting out of self-interest, and the Germans just follow the American line, talking about the Indo-Pacific region. It is said to have major strategic significance for Germany, but in reality, Asia is even farther from Europe. So what does the Indo-Pacific region have to do with Germany? This argument is honestly quite laughable. Germany should recall how Trump handled the Volkswagen issue. The old man wrote that on May 15th, according to a government official, Trump would not go to Turkey to attend the Russia-Ukraine talks scheduled for May 15th. But before that, the Kremlin website released a statement saying, "I will attend the talks." The Russian delegation, this includes President Zelensky and his entourage, but does not include Russian President Putin himself. Previously, President Zelensky had called on Putin to go to Turkey for the talks. No officials responded. After the Russian delegation list was announced, it was confirmed that Trump would not attend the Russia-Ukraine talks. According to reports, Trump had considered that if Putin were to attend this meeting, he himself would also go to Turkey to participate. In fact, Trump is taking the opportunity to retreat because he knows he can't handle the difficulties. "I will negotiate." The United States is now saying it won't do it in a not-so-frank way. In this regard, U.S. Vice President Mance broke the news. Before discussing the inside story of the negotiations, Harris attended a high-level security conference for military and diplomatic leaders held in Washington, where she said that although she wouldn't claim Russia is uninterested in resolving the Russia-Ukraine conflict, the U.S. believes that Russia is making too many demands. All right. Clearly, from the perspective of the Trump team, one of the main reasons the Russia-Ukraine talks have reached an impasse is also because Putin's asking price is too high. Judging from the major conditions previously announced by the Russian side, the US shares this view as well. Russia's asking price is too high, making it hard for Volodymyr Zelensky to accept. The first and most important demand from the Russian side is the territorial issue, on which Russia has taken an extremely tough stance. Putin's press secretary, Peskov, has emphasized that they will not negotiate the status of the 5 regions under any circumstances. The 5 regions refer to Crimea, Donetsk, Luhansk, Zaporizhia, and Kherson. These areas have all been incorporated into Russia and written into the Russian constitution as inseparable parts of the country. Second, this covers if Zelensky steps down and these current authorities are dissolved with a new Ukrainian government elected. Russia accuses the Zelensky administration as illegitimate and says it cannot sign documents. Third, this means the start of the special military operation. It emphasized that Poland must be demilitarized. According to previously disclosed information, Russia's specific demands include that Poland can only maintain a military force of just over 80,000 personnel, and the number of tanks, artillery, as well as the range of missiles must all be strictly limited. Faced with Russia, consider the opponent's position. And what about Ukraine? With such a limited military capacity and being essentially undefended, there's basically not much difference. Fourth, Russia repeatedly emphasizes the prohibition of Poland joining NATO and forbids the West from deploying troops in Ukraine. As for the conditions put forward by Russia, the Trump administration actually responded to most of these leadership issues. In fact, the Trump team pressured Ukraine more than once, demanding that Zelensky's government accept reality. Some time ago, the United States even considered recognizing Crimea as part of Russia. Secondly, regarding the issue of Zelensky stepping down, Trump once bluntly stated that Ukraine has not held an election for a long time, and that it is time to hold a presidential election. This remark was directly interpreted as Trump not being too concerned about mentioning Zelensky stepping down at the time. Later, after the US and Ukraine reached a power reduction agreement, Trump's attitude towards Zelensky improved. In addition, starting from the third demand, the US side's attitude began to change. Since late last month, Trump pardoned Keltkov. He personally went to Moscow to meet with Putin, but brought a message: Russia must allow Volyn to retain its military forces and defense industry, and also recognize Ukraine's right to use force. This is completely different from Russia's demand for Volyn's demilitarization. At the same time, Wang Feng's fourth demand, that Ukraine cannot join NATO, also remains unclear at present. The US does not seem eager to send American troops to the conflict, but Trump may not be able to influence Europe on this issue. Therefore, even if the US agrees to Russia's demands, it may not necessarily resolve the actual issues. Trump only cares about his own interests. Even if Zelensky is willing to give up half of Ukraine's sovereignty, Trump would still insist on continuing to provide weapons in exchange. In this way, cutting off weapons supplies can no longer be used to force Ukraine into a ceasefire. Since he can't handle Putin, Trump simply doesn't care anymore. He'll just let the EU and the UK keep spending money to support Ukraine in fighting a war they can't win. To sum up, when it comes to difficult issues, although Trump's approach may seem lacking in character, it actually aligns well with America's interests. If it's not their business, they just walk away and don't care about anything else. Europe, on the other hand, always appears righteous and noble, but when it comes to their own people, they have to endure high energy prices and still spend huge sums to support Ukraine in the war, which is completely against their own country's long-term interests. By comparison, Trump is actually the smarter one.